It's September the 8th, 2020. Welcome to our lessons in Leviticus, and today is chapter 11. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof, completely divided, and that chews the cud. There are some that only chew the cud or only have a split hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The coney, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales. But all creatures in the seas or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to detest. And since you are to detest them, you must not eat their meat, and you must detest their carcasses. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be detestable to you. These are the birds you are to detest and not eat, because they are detestable: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be detestable to you. There are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all fours that you may eat, those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all other winged creatures that have 4 legs you are to detest. You will make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every animal that has a split hoof not completely divided, or that does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. They are unclean for you. Of the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean for you: the weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the war lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever its use will be unclean, whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth. Put it in water, it will be unclean till evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food that could be eaten but has water on it from such a pot is unclean, and any liquid that could be drunk from it is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean, but anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any seeds that are to be planted, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. If an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every creature that moves about on the ground is detestable. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves about on the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours or on many feet. It is detestable. Do not defile yourselves by any of those creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them, or be made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves about on the ground. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves in the water, and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Amen. Well, I think we live in a day and age today, just in case we think all this discussion about clean and unclean foods is very bizarre and very strange. But don't we live in a day and age when people are more sensitive about food issues than they've ever been before? When we think of how veganism is all the rage, when we think of the debates still raging about GM crops and so on. But it's also true, I think, that nothing quite compares in the modern world with the food laws of Leviticus chapter 11. Although Orthodox Jews to this day, who try and keep a kosher kitchen, they do attempt to put these laws into practice, even to this very day. These laws identify clean and unclean animals, what can and what shouldn't be eaten, creatures from the land, verses 1 to 8, from the water, verses 9 to 12, and from the air, verses 13 to 23, both birds, obviously, and also other insects, other creatures like insects. Also, from verse 24 following, there are laws about not touching dead animals. The ones that are unclean will make you unclean. The ones that are clean will make you unclean if you just touch the carcass of dead creatures. So why have we got this? What is this all about? Is it for medical reasons? Some have suggested that, and knowing that this is all from the mind and the heart, and according to the will of an all-wise God who loves us and who cares for our physical being, our health, and our safety, I think there might well be great wisdom here behind many of these laws. For example, verse 19, if this prohibition against eating bats had been observed in China a year ago, then maybe we wouldn't be having this global catastrophe that we have and we're going through. Eating the wrong foods with problems, issues of parasites and viruses and germs and so on. There are some animals that do seem to be particularly risky. So that, there might be great wisdom in all of this, but we're not told that, obviously, in the text. That's something I think we can perhaps infer. We are actually given more of a hint in a verse like verse 4. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The clean-unclean distinction is mostly to be understood in a ritualistic and a symbolic way. This most basic reality, what you eat, what's on the table in front of you in your home every day, the actual foods that you eat are to be so different, God is saying to the Jews at this time, so different from the eating habits of all the pagan nations around you. And in that sense, in that way, this serves as a constant reminder to you how you are God's people. You're to be the holy nation. You are to be different. You are to be distinct. Your diet is, but you are to be. You are to be the clean as opposed to the unclean nations. Or the word, of course, which sums it up always in the Bible, and especially in Leviticus, the word holy. I think 3 times that's said in verse 45, or 3 times it's said in Leviticus, and it's said in verse 45. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. And these food laws are a reminder to that, a reminder of that, and a help to do that to the Jews throughout history. They're still doing it today. Are these food laws binding on us in the church today? Well, of course not. And there are a number of key texts in the New Testament. Remember Acts chapter 10? Remember the vision, the sheet that came down from heaven full of animals? That pins it down in the New Testament. And yet, in the New Testament, verse 45 in Leviticus 11 is quoted a number of times, and especially in 1 Peter chapter 1. And if we want to understand how to interpret and live out the law of Leviticus, and especially chapter 11, then we need to read the whole of 1 Peter, the whole of the New Testament, in the light of the coming of Christ. Let me just read verses 13 to 16, 1 Peter 1, to close. Therefore, prepare your minds for action. Be self-controlled. Set your hope fully on the grace to be given you when Jesus Christ is revealed. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy, because I am holy.